Okay, making this video because I got about, I don't know, a dozen questions about how to fit 33s on the XMR 850. You guys should try the search function. I've done the same exact thing on my XMR 700, but making another video because no one knows how to use search on YouTube. Um, Basically, I just bolted up the 33s, trimmed some plastics, and cranked up the preload on my springs on all four corners. I added half an inch of preload, which probably gave me about 3/4 of an inch of lift. Now, preload is not a great way to clear tires. The suspension's still going to cycle up to the bump stop, and it's still going to rub when it cycles. So yeah, it'll clear sitting still, but once you start hitting bumps and, hitting the throttle, the rear end squats, you're still going to rub. The rear has very little rubbing with the setup. The front doesn't rub the frame bar like my XMR 700 did because the front shocks have limited travel, which I've talked about in like 4 other videos. But there is some rubbing on the front plastics. You have to do a significant amount of trimming up there. Now, these wheels I'm running are 3.5 offset, meaning that they're 0 offset. So they stick out very far. I think this would work a little bit better with some 5+2 or 4+3 inch wheels. I'll probably try that eventually. It performed really good. It's got plenty of torque and gearing to turn these tires. It just lacks some tire clearance. I don't like the S3 arms. I don't like almost any aftermarket control arm I don't like because they all use annoying bushings that aren't as good as the OEM bushings that this thing comes with. And also the S3 arms were just a huge pain in the ass to install on my XMR 700, so I will not be putting them on anything else. What's up, guys? I just threw the 33 Aztecs on the XMR 850. It was really easy. Basically, they just bolted up. I did a little bit of trimming here, one cut there, and then I trimmed 3 spots back here. 1, 2, 3. That's what I trimmed off, not a whole lot, and they fit. Now, these wheels are 3.5 offset, so they're a little too wide, and they're not bead locks. Eventually, I'll make some bead locks for this size as well, some 18s. But you can see how they stick out pretty far. That's a little obnoxious. I'm gonna get covered in mud. But they totally clear, even at full lock. I'm not rubbing the frame, and that's because the XMR 850/1000 is set up to run a 32 from the factory. They did that because they know everyone's gonna do it. The steering geometry down here is different than the other XMR. It's like the 700 I had, and the shocks are different, so it limits the up travel so you don't hit this bar. So yeah, 33s are probably a bit much. It'll probably rub in some situations, but man, it looks badass. Update on the XMR 850. It did awesome at Plant Bamboo. I had those 30-inch or 33-inch Aztecs on it. Totally kicked ass. The XMR 1000 clutch weights made those 33s feel about like these 30s. Really big difference in the way it revved out. It gets into the peak power a lot faster with the lighter clutch weights, and it just did phenomenal. I did have some rubbing. This piece of plastic got actually broken. You can see where it's cracked. There used to be a bolt there, so that's kind of tore up. That happened on my XMR 700 as well. So the 33s are really a little bit much for this thing. This thing is definitely set up to turn a bigger tire and clear a bigger tire than the XMR 700. It's got lower gears, it's got more power, and it's got more tire clearance, and it doesn't steer as sharp. And this thing has the 33s on it now. Just did a bunch of trimming, a bunch of hammering to make them fit. So I'll be testing those out soon, and that'll be really cool. But yeah, pretty huge. That's probably my favorite Aztec. I like the 30s a lot. I like 32s a lot. But the 33s, man, they're just so big, and they really hurt some feelings. Okay, one more quick note about tire pressure. I'm running very low tire pressure in these tires. For this ride out at Plant Bamboo, I had 3 PSI all the way around. I would not recommend putting a tire this tall on the XMR 850 if you plan on trail riding it, because if you're going to trail ride it, you really need to have around 6 or 7 PSI to have proper handling. The machine's designed for 10 PSI, that's what it says in the manual. So this worked for mudding, and Plant Bamboo's a small park where it's just mud holes. I would not recommend putting these tires on here and going trail ride unless you want to do a lot of mods to the floorboards and the plastics to get better tire clearance. If you put 10 PSI in these things, I'm sure they'd rub a lot more.